Welcome to the Leading Hope Podcast with Kevin Jack. Your influence will lead people somewhere, lead them towards hope. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.
Welcome to Leading Hope with Kevin Jack. I'm your host, VJ Williams, here with my friend and pastor, Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. We will release a new episode every Wednesday, so we'd love for you to subscribe, share on social media, and bring others along with us on this journey of becoming a better leader. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. Hey, we are back with episode 3, the third in this series. We can't wait. I actually said episode 3. This is episode 11. The 3 Rhythms is what we're calling this one. You ready to go?
I'm ready, man.
Let's do it.
So this is our hope throughout this entire focus on rhythms, is that you would develop rhythms in your life that would set your life on a path for where you want it to go. Our rhythms set the trajectory of our lives. And honestly, one of our hopes is that this podcast is one of your rhythms.
Yes.
Within that both of us consume content like there is no tomorrow. And mine is primarily through books. VJ's is primarily through videos and stuff like that, because VJ does a bunch of web development stuff, and so he's able to do both simultaneously. I am not able to do both simultaneously, so that's a skill he has that I don't quite.
I only
at that
dream
level.
of reading like you do.
There we go. You only dream of reading. I like to think that is a literal thing on that.
Right.
But we set up this podcast. The entire format was there's a number of leadership podcasts that we listen to. We said the problem is that, like, I don't always have an hour. Like, outside the summer when I'm cutting my grass, I don't have a steady hour. So I was getting them in bits and pieces on a commute. And so we wanted to set this up to be a place that, 20 minutes, that's the time of the average commute. We wanted to put as much content as we could in the first 10 minutes, and then the second 10 minutes application that if you got it in bits and pieces, if your commute was less than that. But we hope that this is a rhythm that you can have as part of your life that will get you to where you want to be. And I always view it, our leadership development here within our team, within our Hope team, within our church as a whole, in any other area. We think it's so essential, not just that we continuously get better, but I never want us to miss an opportunity because of a lack of ability.
Yeah.
And you don't realize you're going to miss an opportunity until a lack of ability because of a lack of ability until you've missed it.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be the case in your life. So constantly get better, not just for the circumstances around you right now, but for where you're headed. But now with all that said, let me talk through the 3 rhythms. So there are 3 types of rhythms as you're designing the rhythms for your life that you need to be intentional about. And again, we started this whole thing with this big idea that for most of us, the rhythms of our lives are observed and absorbed and not designed. And so as it comes to that, here's the 3 types of rhythms that you need to be aware of. The first one I title simply continuing rhythms. These are things that just keep going, that you don't really have to think about. Every morning, I brush my teeth. I don't have to think about it. It's just, it's mindless. Every morning, I put on deodorant. You're welcome, world. I don't have to think about it. It's mindless. I just do it. There's also, like, other things. I have health rhythms that I'm not even conscious of anymore, that they're so ingrained in who I am. I have habits of reading, habits of exercise, habits of conversations that are just ingrained in my daily routine that I'm not even conscious of. And when it comes to your continuing rhythms, I just want to cycle back to a question that we have asked before. You need to ask, are these inherited? Are they absorbed? Or are they designed? And for some people, you might need the fresh eyes of someone else to be able to identify that for you. And here is the time in your life, and some of you will be coming into it. Some of you have already experienced it, and you can remember that you will experience this more than anything else. It is when you first get married and start living with another individual. And it will be so romantic and so wonderful, and also filled with thousands of questions of, why do you do that way? Why do you hang your towel up that way? Why do you put your shoes here? Why do you load the dishwasher this way? Because all of a sudden you're coming in conflict at times, or at least observation with someone else who has rhythms that were just observed and absorbed by the family unit and life that they lived in before. But fresh eyes can give you that sense of, hey, are my continuing rhythms, are the things that I'm doing that are mindless, are they taking me the place that I want to go? So that's the first type of rhythm, and you might need fresh eyes for your continuing rhythms. The second type of rhythm is cultivating rhythms. And I title it that way because these are things that you need to give a specific attention to because you are attempting to cultivate it in your life. For my kids, a cultivating rhythm is brushing their teeth. For me, it's mindless. I just do it. For them, it's not. I know it because their breath stinks. I know it because their teeth start getting a little yellow over time. But I have to cultivate that in them. I have to remind them of that. And you should have things in your life that you are cultivating. If you have not developed new rhythms, you're not growing over time. I think you should always have something that you are more mindful of in your life, that you are specifically giving attention to cultivating. And we go, and again, we've talked before, I love reading, I love consuming content. If I'm acquiring knowledge, I'm learning more and I'm sharpening my thoughts, but I'm not getting better as a person simply by acquiring knowledge. I grow as a person through my rhythms and habits. I get healthier. I become a better father. I become more empathetic, more caring. Now knowledge that I acquire, information that I consume may spark a thought for me to do something different. But it's within my habits, it's within my routine, it's within my actions that I actually grow. And so let me just set this in on this level. If there's not something that you're cultivating right now, you're not growing. You're not getting better. And if you're not getting better, what are you doing? Yeah. If you're not growing, what are you doing with your life? Because if you're not growing, we never stand still in life. We either get better or we get worse. And so there should be something that you are giving specific attention to cultivate in your life. And so the question with that becomes, how can I reinforce the rhythm? How can I either create accountability with someone else? How can I create accountability to myself? One of the things that we talked about in the last series is what are your expectations of you? And if you were the manager of your life, how would you feel about how you're living? And this then gets embedded within this idea of cultivating rhythms. If you want a starter on this, there's a great book by a guy by the name of Marshall Goldsmith titled Triggers. And what this book is all about, it's about eliminating bad habits and behaviors and rhythms and cultivating new habits, behaviors, and rhythms. And he's got some different things in terms of it. For me, honestly, it was a little too technical, but I love the ideas behind it of scoring yourself on an hour-by-hour basis. I know people who have different ways of triggering their mind to do certain actions. One of the things that has been common within faith for a long time is for people to have cues to pray. And people would say, I want to develop a better prayer life, but merely the intention, desire of developing a better prayer life isn't going to give me a better prayer life. And so I need things that specifically remind my mind to cultivate that in my life, whether it's something they wore, something they saw. Every time I thought about this, I set an alarm for every hour, and every time the alarm went off, I brought my mind back to prayer, brought my mind back to what God was doing. But these are all different ways to cultivate rhythms in your life that help you grow as a person. And so first type of rhythm, continuing rhythms, you need to be mindful of. Cultivating rhythms, you need ways to reinforce them. And then the third type of rhythm is you need evaluation rhythms. And if I'd say for me, I think this is actually the most important area because having evaluation rhythms ensure that your rhythms are in line with the ideal that you are pursuing. Having evaluation rhythms can consistently bring you back to, is how I'm living leading me to where I want to go? Is the trajectory of my life pointing in the direction that I have designed it to be, or is it going off track? And this is where the virtue of vigilance becomes so important. And people will talk about the importance of vigilance. And I've just found it like this. Vigilance without an ideal is paranoia. If you're vigilant, but you don't have something you're pursuing, you're just paranoid. But once we have an ideal, then that's where this virtue of vigilance becomes such a healthy and a good thing. And so when it comes to our evaluation, we need to be vigilant about living a life that is intentional. And that vigilance is about constantly evaluating your rhythms to your ideal and ensuring that your life is headed in the direction that you want it to go. So 3 types of rhythms in your life: continuing rhythms, cultivating rhythms, and evaluation rhythms to make sure you're headed in the direction you want to go.
Love it. Love it. Continuing, cultivating, evaluation. Obviously, those are where we're going to stay here for this. But before we do that, I got to ask you this. You ready?
I have no idea what's coming.
I know you don't. That's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of this podcast is you don't actually have. It's not like I gave you these questions.
None of this is pre-programmed.
Nothing. I don't even write them down before we talk. That's the beauty of this. But here's what I want to ask you. Do you know when the book Triggers was written?
I have. It's since 2010. I do know that.
Okay, so that's just funny because my kids, like, it's funny. They like know that word. Like middle schoolers now, like they'll be like, "Oh, you're triggered."
Yeah.
Oh, you're triggered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm joking about it, but like they understand what that means.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's a response they're waiting for because of something that you're feeling.
That's
something
awesome.
you have. You know what I mean? So I don't know how that applies to this, but I thought that was funny that book was written in 2010 and my kids are middle schoolers.
Welcome to the Leading Hope podcast, the source of helpful information and just random content from time to time that we think is exciting.
It is exciting. We're having fun with this. You said, well, here's a question. Is there a strategy that you employ that over time has made a cultivated rhythm a continued rhythm?
Yeah, so we'll get into this in heavy detail in next month's. But for the sake of this episode, the things that I have found is I cannot develop multiple rhythms at the same time. And so if I'm trying to say, and sometimes we'll get that, and I did it a couple years ago. It was the start of the new year, and everybody's like resolution. And I usually don't set much, but all of these people were saying different things that they were going to do. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of that. And so I had like 10 things that I was going to focus on the next year. And I looked at it 2 months in, and I had not developed a single one of them. I wasn't on track. I was going to run a marathon that year. I hadn't run a mile. Like I was gonna cook once a week. I had made brownies once in 2 months, and that's just because my whole family was gone and I was hungry, and I ate most of the plate of brownies. Which you would think the plate of brownies and the marathon, I would have seen that was. Those were coming in conflict with each other. Yeah, competing goals and resolutions on that. And so the biggest thing that I found is that I can develop one new rhythm at a time.
That's very helpful.
And by just designing things around that, but when I go, this is my focus now, I can stay laser focused on that one thing.
I think that's exactly what I was looking for. I think that's very helpful. You can't create a new rhythm by thinking about 10 of them at one time.
Exactly.
One of the things that you said, and I want to just stick on this topic for a minute or two, was saying acquiring knowledge by itself will not set us up for joy. Like, and we talk about that in church life. And I know this from my previous life that was so far removed. Not really. But that I could come in and you could tell me a bunch of stuff and I could soak that in, right? Mm-hmm. But just having the knowledge itself did nothing for my self-awareness and my ability to change. Yeah. And what we know to be true, and acting on it gives us the joy we desire. So talk about that in the church terms. I know this is a leadership podcast, but talk about that the ability that God gives us to live out our calling.
So say we should always be concerned when our information is getting too far ahead of our action.
Yeah.
We should always be concerned when our knowledge is getting too far ahead of our execution. Because what we'll have a tendency to do is to continuously just become information hogs and just take in more and more and never live differently in any way. And if you're not living differently, if it's not changing how you live, it is worthless.
Yeah.
And if we could quote Jesus on this podcast,
it
says, "Don't throw pearls before swine." And no one wants to think they're swine.
Right.
But the reality is he's saying, hey, don't throw pearls before pigs, because a pig isn't going to know what to do with it, and a pig won't value it how it should be. And I think that is the danger of the information age.
Yeah.
Is we have every bit of information in the world at our fingertips, and we apply none of it.
Yeah.
And so it's just essential within there that we are personally mindful of going, am I just hearing more and more? Am I just learning more and more? Is it shaping who I'm becoming, what I'm doing, or is it just mindless information?
Yeah, you talked about earlier about the content that we take in, whether it's by book or video. Like if I'm going to spend as much time as I do between Sunday night and Tuesday morning, which is my time for that, if I'm going to take in that much content, and that's all it was worth, I have wasted, what is that? I can't do quick math, 18% of my week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's that part of my week was basically nothing. I mean, it was just space and time.
That's exactly it. Like, why take in content? Just watch a movie. It's more entertaining anyway.
Right.
If it's not shaping your life.
Right. So that leads me into the next thing. You said you were asking the question, does the rhythm make me want to be a leader, like who I'm trying to be? Does the rhythm? How can we set ourselves up to evaluate ourselves on a consistent way, in a consistent way?
So I think one of the simplest things you can do, and for some people this sounds crazy, you go, oh, I don't want to be a robot. And I would just kind of counteract that from the start before I even tell you what it is. Do you want to be a robot, or do you want to live a life that doesn't have purpose? Like, do you want to take the risk of being a robot, or would you rather take the risk of living a life that doesn't end up where you want it to end up? I think we actually have to document where we want our life to go. Mm. And when I say document, I mean like pen, paper, write it down. Mm. And almost every organization in the world has a mission and vision statement. And that's a whole other conversation as to whether or not they're living into that because they haven't designed the rhythms to fulfill the vision and they just focused on the vision. But they understand that, like, no organization has ever gone, oh, yeah, like, the vision's obvious. Like, we all
I wish I could see your face. They can't.
We all get it. Like, no one does that. And you go, yeah, we understand what matters most. Right. I could just keep going on that forever. But we do that personally. Like, hey, what are you trying to do with your family? Well, like, I mean, we're a family. No, really. Like, what type of kids are you attempting to raise? What type of impact are you attempting to make in your life? And I think if people would actually sit down and like write it down, they would first off realize that they don't really know what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
That they're doing a lot of stuff, but they don't really know what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And if I could stand on a soapbox for just a second, is if they sat down and wrote down what they actually wanted their life to be and the impact that they were trying to create and the purpose that they were living by, they would look at their hurried, frenetic, frantic life and go, why on earth am I doing all these things?
Yeah.
And so I think that's maybe the most important step is to go, I'm going to do what I do in my business. I can do what my company did. I'm going to write down why I'm here and what I'm seeking to accomplish.
Yeah, and do it in a like, you don't need to wait until the end of the year to do it. Like, this is something you need to be doing at the beginning of whatever you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. One of the things that the company the companies I've worked for, every corporation has a review process.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We have one here. But it's very strategic in the way you guys set it up. It's quarterly. Most of the companies that are the Fortune 500 companies, and I don't know all of them, but a lot of them have it set up at the end of the year. You know when they set up their goals for the whole year? When they're doing their review. Yeah. What was you set the goal on the day you set your review. I mean, it's worthless. It's just writing it down so someone can look at it and give you a pay raise or a percentage increase or something to talk about. To justify the ends, right? Yep. And I'm thinking, man, if you would have only set this up at the beginning. So I'm actually, through this, I've taken different steps on the things that I do, right? So I'm setting this up way ahead of time because I'm learning from the leadership podcast how to do some of these things differently and applying these different rhythms to my life.
If nobody's getting better from this, we're getting better from this.
That's exactly right. So that's where we'll leave it today. Thank you so much for joining us. Kevin, is there something that you want to just cover before we leave that just kind of wraps this all up?
If you're not focused on getting better in some way, then you're not getting better. If you don't have something you're attempting to cultivate in your life, you're probably going backwards rather than going forwards.
That's awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you back next week. Remember to continue to share on all of the social media platforms, as well as subscribing to this podcast through Apple and all the different platforms that are available to you. We love hearing from you guys. Make sure that you go on to leadinghope.online and subscribe to the newsletter there as well. You'll get this information and more information that'll be coming in the future. So thank you for joining us. Next week, we will jump into episode 12, Find Some Rhythms. We can't wait to see you next week. Have a great day.